in your book, you talk a lot about these masters of the craft, and a lot of them were not silver spoon guys. A lot of them were people like yourself that came from blue collar backgrounds. Talk a little bit about some of these characters you met.
I interviewed the best investors in the United States. Obviously you can't have every one of the best investors, but I've had 20 some of them. And they're all, people made a lot of money with very few exceptions. Some work for endowments, but they're not very wealthy. But the people who are in the private sector have made staggering fortunes. Almost all of them came from blue-collar backgrounds or lower middle-class backgrounds. People who come from very, very wealthy backgrounds are not generally going to turn out to be the great investors because they probably aren't going to be hungry enough. They're not going to be driven enough to do that. So you and I have a similar background, it sounds like. We didn't have any money, so you knew if you're going to get anywhere in life, you had to do it on your own. I have 3 children. They're all in what I call the highest calling of mankind, private equity. But whether they'll be as driven as I am, I don't know. It seems unlikely. And as you may know, the hardest thing in the world to do really well is raise children. It's even harder if you have wealth because very often you see children from wealthy families don't seem to have the drive that you really want them to have.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that's been great for me is having my mom and dad still living in Ireland, grew up in the same, we had 710 square feet. So, the first liar never has a chance, right? We had 6 kids in 710 square feet, grandparents living with us on the weekends. And my kids would get to go home and visit this all the time and reconnect. And my parents lived in that house for 65 years. And I'm happy to say, my kids have developed that juice, and they're in different environments. My daughter's an equestrian rider, but she takes that kind of what we call the immigrant mindset. So I was always trying to instill in them that immigrant mindset, to pursue it and to as if you're a new person coming to the country, that whatever endeavor you are. And it is possible though, and I know your kids are doing very well. They might not have the same yenta that you have, but they seem to be doing well.
Look, I drove my 10-year-old son when he was 10. He's now 32, but when I drove my 10-year-old son to see the house I grew up in, which was 800 square feet, it was a row house. And he said, "Dad, that's not so small. You have 10 doors." I said, "No, that's 10 different houses." He just didn't realize the house could be that small.
This is hilarious, Dave, because I did it with my kids, a row house, and it was 4 doors. And I go, "That's not so small. What are you talking about?" It's the same story.
I agree. Same thing. So, in those days, you didn't know anymore, and you grew up with what you inherited. You can't say, "Well, I wish I was rich." You'll never get anywhere. You just do the best you can in the circumstance you find yourself in.
Right. So talk to me. How does a boy from Baltimore end up billionaire investor with the Carlyle Group? How'd you do it?
Luck is the most important word, I guess. What happened was I was interested in government and politics. When I was growing up, there were no billionaires to speak of in the United States. There were no private equity firms, hedge funds, tech startups. So if you were Jewish, you'd say, "Okay, I'll be a lawyer or a doctor." And I didn't think I was going to go to medical school. I didn't think I could get through the science courses. So I went to law school. I was interested in politics, and ultimately I wanted to work in the White House. So I went to work in the White House for Jimmy Carter. I was inspired to do that by a man who was Irish in his background, John Kennedy. When I was young, he was a dashing young president of the United States, and I didn't think I could ever be a candidate, but I thought I could be an advisor. So I did ultimately get a job working at the White House for President Carter. After we lost the election in 1980, I had to go back and get a real job, which was working as a lawyer. I wasn't very good at it. So if you're not good at something, you have to find something else. Nobody ever won a Nobel Prize hating what they do. You have to love what you're doing. And I didn't like practicing law, and my clients didn't like my practicing law either. They didn't think I was very good. So I started a firm on a whim in 1987 with no money. I recruited some people and told them I was going to get some money, but I didn't really know where I was going to get it. And then we grew it to a firm that's now manages about $400 billion. So it's been successful.
No doubt. Thanks for watching. If you want more tips on how to think, feel, and do better, check out these videos too. Oh, by the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a like if you enjoy the content.